welcome to another episode of the Unexpected Entrepreneur Podcast. It is officially episode 2 of technically season 1. We keep saying that because we've had the podcast for a while. If this is your first time tuning in, we've had the podcast for a while, but this is like our first actual season. And this season is all about branding. And today it's going to be a short and sweet one, and it's all about defining your ideal photography client.
So before we jump into the things that you can actually do to figure out who your ideal client is, we want to cover what an ideal client actually is, because I feel like that term gets thrown around a lot and you might not actually know what it is, what it actually means, who it is. So your ideal client is basically your dream client. This is who you would work with 10 times out of 10. You absolutely love working with them. They love working with you. When you see that inquiry come through, you're like, thank God. Like, this is great. I want to work with you. If I could just duplicate you every single time, that's who I want. That is your ideal client.
One thing we also want to mention too is that when it comes to figuring out who your ideal client is, it is totally okay if you're at the beginning of your business journey right now and you pick one ideal client only to find like a few months from now that maybe it's not your ideal client, or you decide you want to niche down even more. That is totally okay. And that is totally relatable. We've been through the same thing. When we first started Inkpot Creative, we were at one of those online businesses that was like, we'll work with all service providers, which I'm sure you've heard that before. Most people are going to say that. It's like a photographer or a wedding photographer being like, I want to work with all engaged couples. Like, obviously you do, but you have to get a lot more niche than that. You have to think about, for us, it was thinking about what types of creatives do we want to work with? Is it values based? Is it the industry that they're in, which is kind of what we ended up doing, because now we really specialize in photographers and other wedding pros. But you really just have to think really deeply about it. And it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel super strange trying to really think about who you want to work with. I know I personally struggled with it a lot. And it's one of those things that as we've been in business longer and longer, we keep getting clearer and clearer on who our ideal client is. And that's totally okay. That's going to come with time for you. So the first thing that you're going to want to do if you've had clients before is think about your favorite clients that you've worked with. Try to find some different common threads. So, what did they have in common? Was there anything that really stood out about them? Did they all say the same things to you in your like reviews or testimonials, or when they first reached out on, the inquiry form, or even on your discovery call? Are there any values that you can really kind of tie between all of them that you can kind of use to hone in on who you want to continue to work with?
And once you have that, you can really start to break it down into certain demographics and details to think about each client. So, some basic ones that you can think about is, what is their age range? Like, are you a person who you're like, I really want to work with the kind of Gen Z group of people who are starting to get married? And it's weird to think of like Gen Z, but we're technically Gen Z. So, 20, 25, 26, 24, like, do you want to work with the younger 20s? Are you someone who's like, no, I want to work with people who are maybe like late 20s to early 30s? That's where I find that I have my ideal clients. They're have the same values as me. They're at the, understand the value of this, everything like that. You can even think about things like, where do they shop? What types of clothes do they wear? Are they super casual? Are they super luxury? Are they, the types of people who might have money but don't necessarily flaunt it, so they can afford to spend a little bit more on their wedding, but they're still going to be shopping at Target or something like that. You can even think about, where do they work? Are there certain industries that you just end up attracting more? So for us personally, we were looking at it and we were like, okay, we attract photographers, but we really are attracting a lot of wedding photographers. So you can get really specific with that. So maybe your couples, the couples that you really love, end up being couples that run their own businesses. Or maybe you really find that you work really well with teachers, or you work really well with tech people. Like, you can get super, super specific. You can also think about values that they have, and specifically values that align with you too. So maybe it is, for us, it's like inclusivity. We preach that, we practice that. We want everyone and everything to be inclusive. So maybe you just find couples who really value that, or they really value creativity and they value you as an expert in your field and they trust you. So think about different values that they might come to. These aren't things that they'll probably say straight up to you. Some of these things they will, like if it is inclusivity, people will probably come up to you and be like, I appreciate you and I want to work with you because of how inclusive you are and how much you push it, and you make me feel like I'm comfortable in this space. So some things they will come out and say. Sometimes you'll have to kind of decipher things from discovery calls, inquiry forms, any questionnaires that you have them answer. You can also think about different hobbies that they have. Are you finding people that, really love the outdoors? And that's the common thread, is they all love hiking in national parks. Or are you finding people that are foodies? Or does everyone you love have, love going to breweries, and maybe they're doing a cool like beer tap thing at their reception, and that's what the common thread is. And what are they looking for when it comes to the wedding? That's another big one. So you probably want to decipher if you want to do big weddings, small weddings, elopements, destination weddings. Those are all big topics that you could realistically offer all of them. We've worked with plenty of clients who have offered all of those, but almost every single one has been like, this one's my favorite. I really like to do the bigger weddings, or I really like the super intimate elopements with just the couple. So think about that as well when you're thinking about your ideal client. And then you can turn these into actual people. So it sounds a little weird, but basically make up fake people that tick all of these boxes, but in slightly different ways. So we would say anywhere between like 2 to 3. You don't have to go and create a whole, database of these fake people, but just a couple people so that you have enough information that you can kind of base it on. But think about, okay, maybe my person is Brooke, and she is between the ages of 24 to 30. So let's say she's 26 and she works for herself, and her partner also works for themselves, and they really love, being outside and being in parks, and that's why they're going to elope in a national park. And really just go through each individual option and think through it. Think about what they would like, what you would want to see, what kind of draws you to that person, and make that whole persona. Now, like KP said, your ideal client can change, and that's totally fine. So these personas might change over time. My number one tip when it comes to kind of doing this, figuring out the common threads between everyone, figuring out if there's certain values or hobbies or commonalities between everyone, would be to create a client database that has all of the clients that reach out to you. These can be ones that actually book or ones that don't book, because even the ones that don't book can be really helpful when it comes to figuring out who your ideal client is. But make a list, have a database somewhere, Google Sheets, Airtable, something that lists out all of the people that reach out to you, any information you can get from them, put it in there, and that'll help you kind of look at it and be like, oh, wow, okay. Because one, it might show you threads that you didn't see. And two, we can't remember everything. We have so many things going on that, like, if you try to think back to a wedding 6 months ago and you're like, how old were they? What did they like to do? Was it this or this? Or if you're booking multiple weddings at a time, you're probably not going to just instantly remember all of these small details about them. So create some sort of system where you can record all of this stuff and look at it. And that's really going to help you figure out who your ideal client is, see any shifts in your ideal clients over the years, and kind of be able to use that when it comes to your marketing, your website, your brand, everything like that.
And just kind of going off of that, if you're DIYing this, then it is totally okay to use tools like ChatGPT to help you come up with your personas. So if you can like make a list of, exactly who your ideal client is and like what they're into, where they shop, all the questions Jesse kind of went into, and you can feed that into a tool like ChatGPT and just ask it to generate some ideal clients for your brand. That is just going to help you that much more when you go to do like your marketing and you write your Instagram captions and everything, because you can kind of create your content with that specific person in mind. Because you can be like, oh, like I'm creating this post for Jenny. So something like that is really just going to help you a lot. And honestly, there is no harm in using a tool that is going to help you come up with like this whole backstory for a person that, if that's not your thing, it'll help you a lot. Our next section that we wanted to talk about is, why does this all matter? So I kind of just dug into this a little bit, but your ideal client actually plays a huge role in your brand, right? So it's going to dictate everything from the look and feel of your brand, right? So your logos, your color palette, the fonts that you use, even the, style of photos that you're photographing and putting on your website, your messaging. So again, kind of, how you write your Instagram captions, how you show up when you film a video for your Instagram stories, how you create your TikTok videos, and then also how you present yourself online. It can even come all the way down to how you actually show up in person to photograph a wedding. So, for example, if your ideal client is the type of person who really values experiencing their wedding, they really want to be present, having a brand that talks about capturing the perfect cinematic shots is probably not what's going to connect with them, right? They're going to want someone that's more so. I feel like the word third wheel is used so often in wedding photography marketing, but they're going to want someone who's pretty much just like the third wheel, who's just present, documenting the day for them so that they can really be in the moment and not feel like they're being, pulled away every 2 minutes for a really posed family photo, right? Or if your ideal client is someone that is looking for like a vintage film feeling, having a brand that's super bright and colorful and vibrant like ours is probably not going to connect with them as much. They're going to want something that really speaks to them.
Okay, so kind of to wrap up what we've just gone over here, when you are thinking about who your ideal client is, our first step is think about your favorite clients that you had in the past. Think about the different things that you've loved about them, where they came from, everything like that. From there, you can kind of start to morph into breaking down all of your clients, figuring out the different questions that we ask. So, age range, where they shop, where do they live, what types of clothes do they wear, where do they work, all of those questions. Go through them and take time to do this. This isn't something that's going to happen in an hour. This is something that's going to happen probably over a couple of days because sometimes it's hard to come up with the answers and we're just not in the headspace. So give yourself time and space to do this. Really sit down and think about it because this is going to inform a lot of things about your brand. So it's not something that you want to rush to just get through, but think about those questions, think about the answers to them. Once you have those, then you can go make a couple fake people, couple fake personas that you can come back to, lean on when it comes to all of your marketing, your brand, your whole online presence, everything like that. And then once you have those, you want to make sure that you actually use it. This is how you're going to attract those people to you. And more importantly, or equally as important, it's going to deter the people who you don't want. So I know a lot of people are scared to do that, but attracting clients and deterring clients are both really important because at the end of the day, if you are attracting a super wide range of people, so say 100 people are inquiring with you, but only 5 of them are your ideal clients, that's a lot of time and energy spent on clients that aren't going to end up booking with you. Where if they see your site or they see your social media or they read your messaging, and they're like, this photographer is great, but they might not be the best fit for me. That's totally fine. Everyone is not going to be the best fit for you. And as hard as it is to accept that sometimes, creating that space and giving them the opportunity to kind of go a different direction before you actually interact with them is just going to leave more open space for your ideal clients to come through. And that's what we ultimately want. So take the time to make these people up and then actually use those ideas, that messaging, the things that they like, they don't like, things that they would want to see on your site, all of that as you kind of build out your brand and build out your presence online. So, short and sweet episode for today. That is all that we have for you.
Next week, we will be tuning in with another episode on Wednesday all about developing your unique brand identity as a photographer.